Mansfield that many of us who were here during the Brexit negotiations and remember the pain of those evenings, as well as the fisticuffs, know only too well that the scars cut deep.
Here's Labour MP Stella Creasy giving an amazing speech at a debate about the impact of Brexit, absolutely demolishing the reasons for leaving and making an excellent case for stronger ties with the EU.
But that's why I think also Robert, and I congratulate him for his petition, needs to know the truth. Because if the member for Clacton was in the country, I'm sure he would be telling all of us that we need straight talking. So let's have some straight talking about this. Brexit is a disaster. It's a disaster by anybody's metric, not least those who purported that this was somehow the hallowed land. The pandemic has spared some of the blushes of those people who still try to claim that we've got some elusive sovereignty as a result of leaving the European Union. But we can see the damage. Our constituents can see the damage. Many have already quoted some of the figures. Let me quote some more. 1.8 million fewer jobs created in the economy as a result, a number that is likely to rise to 3 million by 2035. 16,500 small businesses have stopped exporting to Europe altogether. Those of us who were on the parliamentary delegation last week had the pleasure of listening to Lord Frost trying to argue that up was down.
Sad.
But we know the truth for our constituents. We have seen the damage. We have seen that what was a bad situation in leaving the European Union was compounded by the ways in which the previous administration chose to run it. What on earth made them decide that we wouldn't even share security alerts with our colleagues in Europe? What on earth is it in the interest of British farmers to not even share food security alerts with our colleagues simply because it had the word Europe in the title?
Shame.
The border operating model that is adding billions of pounds to the cost of food in this country. What on earth made them think that adding £145 a time a pallet of food came over here was somehow in the interests of British consumers or indeed British businesses? And that's before we even get on to the uncertain geopolitical situation that we are in. So by any metric, it is easy to understand why Robert brought forward this petition. The Brexiteers, to me, are like those people, and we've all met them on a night out. They join your group, they start a fight in the club, they get you kicked out, but they still maintain 3 hours later, as they're walking you around in an industrial estate somewhere, which is completely empty, that somewhere they know a great club that we can still get into. The challenge for all of us who recognise the damage that has been done to this country, to our national reputation, to our economies, to our communities, and yes, to our values, to the idea that our European neighbours and friends would feel in any way unwelcome, is that we don't want to be that weirdo who turned up who thinks that, well, if we walk around the streets a few more times, we can go back and the bouncers won't recognise us and it's all fine and we can walk back in. Because the brutal reality is we have left the European Union and we owe it to people who care about this country, and I think everybody in this chamber does, actually, even whether they still purport that Brexit was a good idea or not, to talk truth to our constituents, to work out what we can actually do to salvage what can be left. And that is what this debate today is all about, because if we are honest, nobody is here actually saying that rejoin should be the sole priority of the government. And the reason they're doing that is because we know full well that when we are facing a salvage operation, Europe will only talk to us once more, again once. And who can blame them? Because for years we were like that difficult, awkward man your aunt married who turned up at Christmas and always caused a fuss, and thank God she divorced him. And now we appear acting as if nothing has changed and we should be invited to Sunday lunch. We owe respect to our colleagues in Europe when they themselves are dealing with challenges like Putin, economic uncertainty, yes, looking at what we can all do to secure peace in the Middle East. They owe it from us some respect. Sometimes, frankly, it appears as if we think our colleagues in Europe don't read our newspapers. I promise you that they do. So the challenge for all of us is to owe truth to our colleagues in Europe, truth to our constituents. it would take years to renegotiate, to rejoin the European Union, even if we were to get a fast-tracked relationship, even if they could be confident that we wouldn't change our mind again. And I absolutely recognise the public are far ahead of politicians in this debate, all of us scarred by those Brexit years. It would take years because it means going around every single individual country. It is worth remembering that our membership of the European Union was vetoed twice by France, because that's the way the process works. This is not a quick process. So those of us, and I stand here as chair of the Labour Movement for Europe, passionate about our relationship with Europe and what is possible, hold at our hearts our constituents. And our constituents need us to do what we can in the next 18 months, or else the damage that Brexit has done to this country will be so irreparable, there will be little left to negotiate. I'll happily give way.
I'm really grateful to all that my honourable friend has done on this issue. Does she agree that it would be really helpful at this point, 9 years on, that we have a comprehensive impact assessment? Because in 2016, we were talking about the projected harm that Brexit records. Now we've got the evidence. Should government prepare that so we can then make some sound judgments on the basis of that?
I don't disagree with my colleague. I just think it's so plain to see how we have cut ourselves off. Even when it came to the pandemic, even when it came to initially standing up to Putin and Ukraine, we were outside the room shouting in. I think we owe it to our constituents now to be as brutal as we can and humble as we need to be to make the case for what we can do in the next 18 months. And I just want to say a little bit about that, because I'm supremely conscious about time, not least in these uncertain times. The previous administration chose to walk us out of any foreign affairs cooperation. That includes not just hard power, but soft power. So for us in the Labour Movement for Europe, there's an utter priority, absolutely, to do a defence and security cooperation agreement, but also to include aid in that conversation, because Europe is the third largest donor around the world. Whatever you think of the cuts to the aid budget, clearly duplication is a problem, but so too is separation when it comes to looking at how we can stand up to the threats that we face around the world. Absolutely, as my colleagues have pointed out, we must join the Pan-European Mediterranean Convention. We frankly think these times call for moving on from talk of red lines to talking about mutual benefit. With the uncertainty of whoever is in the White House and the consistency there, our constituents need us to know that we will pursue what is a simple truth about Brexit, which is you can fight many things in life, but you can't fight geography. Of course, trade with our neighbours is always going to be important and critical to the future economy, so we must do what we can to reduce the trade barriers. Some of us were into youth mobility scheme before it was fashionable, and some of us over a year ago were arguing for it. We consider that it is absolutely in the interest of the British public to get one. We don't believe that what came back last summer was the right deal for this country, but absolutely we should be looking at what is possible. And in that conversation, we must prioritise our apprenticeships. Because I am old enough to remember when this country used to, in our national cultural life, celebrate young men from the northeast going to Germany to be able to skill and train. It was called Auf Wiedersehen Pet, and I'm sure the member from Strangford was a regular viewer of the programme. And that was absolutely youth mobility at the time. Our young people in this country did not vote for this situation. They should not bear the brunt of it. They need us to fight for every opportunity that can come for them. So a youth mobility deal, as we've already said, we've got them with other countries. They're not freedom of movement, because you can control why people come here, is in their interest if it isn't just about students. Let us talk about every young person. Let us also talk about energy. Oh, I'll happily give way.
I'm the only one ready for giving way. As a former Erasmus exchange student myself, with personal lived experience of the immense opportunities that youth mobility provides, does she also recognise that youth mobility not only creates immense opportunities for British students abroad and European students potentially coming to the UK, but also fundamentally that this does not rub up against the red lines that the government has set itself in the manifesto last year, and of course that it does not provide a pathway to citizenship, it is not freedom of movement, but also that it does not provide access to financial dependency on the state?
My colleague is absolutely right on all fronts. Look, a youth mobility scheme, a youth opportunity scheme with apprenticeship at the heart of it is the right thing to do. And crucially, on the timeline that I've set out about salvation for this country and salvaging something from the damage that Brexit has done, it could be achieved within that 18-month window. One final item as well to add to the list of things we could do in 18 months is about our energy security, and in particular the emissions trading scheme and the carbon border adjustment mechanism. For many of us, for our vital industries to our defence as well, including steel, it is absolutely critical that we get our CBAM, our European emissions trading schemes aligned. And Aaron Beverin told us that the language of priorities is the religion of socialism. Yeah. I stand here ruthlessly prioritising the British interest, which was always being stronger and taller on the world and confident that we could work with other countries. Never more have we needed that spirit, but never more have we needed to be clear about what needs to be done when. So I recognise the passion behind this petition. I simply say to those who are petitioning this way, let us not fall into the trap that the Brexiteers have done of offering false hope when the people in this country need real change and real relationships and real solutions. The member for Clacton may not be here, but his spirit infuses our debate if we do otherwise.
Click here for Lib Dem MP laughs at Lord Frost's tragic ignorance over the impact of Brexit.